Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are having a great day. We are going to jump in here with 7.5. So we finished up World War One, and we're rolling into these unresolved tensions. Make sure you have your notes packet and follow along. All right, so we're going to explain the continuities and changes in territorial holdings from 1900 to the present. All right, so the League of Nations. Hey, this was established in 1920 following World War One. Think of it as like the predecessor to the United Nations, which we still have today. But it was the first worldwide intergovernmental organization whose primary mission was to maintain world peace. It was conceived during the Paris Peace Conference that concluded World War One, with its creation anchored in the Treaty of Versailles. The League aimed to prevent wars through collective security and disarmament and to settle international disputes through negotiation arbitration. Though the League of Nations had several key functions, we're going to focus on how it was involved in resolving territorial issues after World War One. The League really provided a forum for resolving international disputes through dialogue, arbitration, and inquiry before they escalated into warfare. This function was critical in its involvement in territorial disputes post World War One. The mandate system administered territories on behalf of the League with the goal of preparing them for independence. The system was applied to former colonies and territories of the defeated Central Powers. Okay, so under the League of Nations mandate system, territories that were controlled by countries defeated in World War One were transferred to the victors under the guise of mandates. This system was theoretically designed to prepare the territories for self rule and independence, although in practice it often amounted to little more than a redistribution of colonies among the victorious powers. The mandates were divided into three classes based on their perceived readiness for self governance, with Class A mandates considered closest to independence, Class B mandates seen as less developed, and Class C mandates consisting largely of territories considered to be the best, administered under the laws of mandatory power as integral portions of their territory. This pictured here is the just original article that defines three mandate classes. All right, so our next two slides are going to cover Class A mandates, or just a couple examples. These were territories formerly under Ottoman control. Okay, there are others. We're not going to be able to cover them all. So first, we have the British Mandate for Palestine and Transjordan. Okay, the mandate was established by the League of Nations in 1922, following the defeat and dismantling of the Ottoman Empire after World War One. The legal basis for the mandate was the Treaty of Sèvres, and later the Treaty of Lausanne, though the region was effectively under British control since the end of the war in 1918. The Balfour Declaration of 1917, issued by the British government, had already indicated support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The British faced significant challenges in implementing the mandate, largely due to conflicting promises made during World War One to both Arab leaders, and that was for supporting the British against the Ottomans, and Zionist leaders who were encouraging Jewish immigration and settlement. The Mandate period saw significant Jewish immigration driven by Zionist aspirations. This immigration was opposed by the Arab population, leading to tension and sporadic violence. In 1921, the territory east of the Jordan River was separated from the rest of Palestine and given a form of self rule under the Shemite leader Abdullah I, though it still remained under British oversight. This area, called Transjordan, and later it was just called Jordan, gained independence in 1946. We'll cover more of this in Unit 8, kind of after the end of World War II. And by 1947, the British government basically referred the Palestine problem to the UN. The UN proposed a partition plan that would divide the territory into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international administration. This plan was accepted by Jewish leaders but rejected by Arab leaders, and we'll get into that post World War II. All right, so the French mandate for Syria and Lebanon. This was established after World War I and encompassed the modern day countries of Syria, Lebanon, parts of Turkey, and for a time, a portion of modern day Israel. This mandate was part of a broader division of the Ottoman Empire's Arab provinces by the victorious Allied powers. France's administration of these territories was marked by efforts to control and recognize them in ways that would ensure French economic and strategic interests while facing significant local resistance. The mandate was officially sanctioned by the League of Nations in 1923, though French control over the region began in 1920 following the San Remo Conference. The French justified their mandate with the claims that the territories were not yet ready for self-governance, and thus required French assistance to modernize and develop politically, economically, socially. If you think about it, it was really just the same rationales for imperialism from Unit 6, right? So France divided the mandate into several entities, really to reflect the diverse ethnic and religious makeup of the population, but also to implement a divide and rule strategy that would weaken nationalistic and unifying movements. So first we have Lebanon, and that was designed with a Christian majority in mind. Lebanon was carved out to serve as a model Christian state in the Middle East. However, the country's diverse population, including significant Muslim communities, led to tensions and complexities in its political system. Syria was further divided into several statelets, including the state of Damascus, state of Aleppo, the Alawite state, which covers the territory of modern-day Alawite in Syria, and the Jabal Druze state, which is home to the Druze minority. This division was deeply unpopular among Syrians, who saw it as an attempt to fragment their nation and weaken its potential for independence. Greater Lebanon was our next one. That's in 1920. France established Greater Lebanon by adding regions with Muslim majorities to the predominantly Christian Mount Lebanon, sowing the seeds for future sectarian tensions. And then the Sanjak of Al-Andretta. Later, the Sanjak of Al-Andretta was given special status, eventually becoming part of Turkey in 1939 following a referendum. All right, so the division of Syria fueled nationalist sentiments and resistance against French rule. Notable uprisings such as the Great Syrian Revolt of 1925 to 1927 showcases the widespread opposition to French policies and the desire for independence. This revolt was sparked in part by French policies, which included high taxes, an attempt at compulsory military service, a lack of political freedoms, limited autonomy for local governance, failed protections for minority groups, and the displacement of rural populations through the allocation of land to foreigners. The ideas of Arab nationalism and unity were gaining momentum across the Middle East, and that significantly influenced political activists. The notion of an independent Arab state free from foreign control was a powerful mobilizing force. Really, the major point here for you guys that the French mandate for these areas increased feelings of nationalism and desires for independence. All right, Germany's East Africa was the largest of Germany's overseas colonies. After World War I, the bulk of this territory was transferred to British control as the Mandate of Tanganyika. The British administration focused on agriculture development and infrastructure improvement. This included the construction of railways and roads. Tanganyika achieved independence in 1961 and later united with Zanzibar in 1964 to form Tanzania. All right, Class C mandate, Southwest Africa. This is now known as Namibia. That was transferred to South Africa, which at the time was a British dominion. South Africa applied its apartheid policies to the territory, leading to prolonged resistance and conflict. The international community never recognized South Africa's annexation of the territory and it remained under the League of Nations, which later became the UN, supervision until it gained independence in 1990. Through the League of Nations mandates, the Ottoman Empire and Germany, remember they were central powers on the losing side of World War I, all lost territories. Those territories were transferred to British and French control, resulting in gains for those countries. So even though imperialism was kind of stopping, these mandates made it better or made it easier for them to expand. All right, then we have the puppet state of Manchukuo. This was established in 1932 and was a result of Japan's expansionist policies leading up to and during World War II. Manchukuo was central to Japan's ambitions to dominate Asia. It really served as both a symbol of Japanese imperial might and also a practical step towards realizing that greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. It was a grandiose concept. It was promoted by Japan as a coalition aimed at the mutual benefit of Asian countries free from Western colonial rule. No different than like the NAFTA, right? The North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, where we have alliances with other countries that are close to us and kind of help us benefit trade-wise. In practice, though, it facilitated Japanese economic exploitation and military expansion through the region. The establishment of Manchukuo marked the beginning of a series of aggressive territorial gains by Japan, setting the stage for its broader ambitions in Asia, and certainly contributed significantly to the tensions that led up to World War II. All right, this leads us to the Mukden incident, and this occurred on September 18th, 1931. This was the pretext for the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, which was a region in northeast China. And remember, Manchuria, lots of resources, and was also very strategically located. The incident was a staged explosion by the Japanese army on a section of the South Manchurian Railway near Mukden. Japan accused China of sabotage, but really, remember, the Japanese army launched the attack. So this was their justification to launch a full-scale military assault on Manchuria. Within months, Japanese forces had occupied much of the region, establishing the puppet state of Manchukuo. This act of aggression marked a significant escalation in Japan's imperialist expansion in Asia and was a direct challenge to the international order. This led to Japan's withdrawing from the League of Nations after its actions were condemned. So Japan stages an attack, fakes it, uses it as an excuse to invade Manchuria. When they get condemned, they quit the group. All right, so this then becomes a puppet state. Manchukuo was officially led by Puyi, and that's who's pictured there on the slide. He was the last emperor of the Qing dynasty, but in reality, it was really controlled by the Japanese army. Served all of Japan's economic and military interests. The state administration implemented policies that facilitated the exploitation of Manchuria's abundant natural resources, which were crucial to Japan's industrial growth and war efforts. Infrastructure, like railways and factories, they were developed to support Japanese needs, often at the expense of the local population and environment. The creation and administration of Manchukuo had significant consequences for Japan and the broader region. Internationally, it led to Japan's isolation, as its aggressive expansionism was condemned by the League of Nations. This act marked Japan's increasing militarization and detachment from international norms, setting the stage for its participation in World War II. Domestically, those resources and strategic advantages really supported Japan's industrial and military expansion, but those short-term gains were overshadowed by the eventual devastation of World War II. The exploitation and harsh treatment of the Chinese population also sowed seeds of resentment, contributing to what's still long-standing tensions between Japan and China. The legacy of Manchukuo, though, is one of imperial ambition that ultimately led to significant human suffering and contributed to the geopolitical dynamics in East Asia that persisted long after the fall of the Japanese Empire. All right, so the greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. It was a key element of Japanese foreign policy. We talked about it a few slides ago, but it's just a block of Asian nations all under Japanese leadership. And they're going to do that to liberate them from the Western colonial rule and influence. And to be fair to Japan, right, they dealt with, the foreign invaders, and that's why they were an isolationist country for 150 years. The building of this began largely with the establishment of Manchukuo, and Japan positioned this initiative as a platform for economic cooperation and mutual prosperity. This is Asian solidarity against Western imperialism. This vision was framed as benevolent guidance by Japan, intended to usher in an era of shared wealth and freedom. But the reality was just a facade, really, for justifying Japanese imperial expansion across Asia. Right? The true objective, we want natural resources, we want labor and markets necessary because Japan's trying to build our industry, build our military sectors. So consequently, this led to oppressive Japanese imperialism, where the supposed liberation and prosperity were overshadowed by exploitation and control. I'll say it again. Key factor in the buildup to Japan's involvement in World War II. On the left here is a Japanese propaganda poster from 1935. That's promoting unity between Japan and China and Manchukuo. From the right to left, it says, with the help of Japan, China, and Manchukuo, the world can be in peace. I'm not buying it. All right, so we're going to switch gears from Japan to China. In the next slide, we're going to feature an excerpt from Building a Total Mobilization State, Thinking About War and Society in 1920s Manchuria by Chi-Mang Kuang. Before we take a look at that excerpt, we introduce the Fengshan Army of China, also called the Fengshan Clique. This Chinese army faction got its name from the Fengshan provinces in northeast China. It protected and governed much of the area that was Manchuria and worked with the Japanese to protect their interests after the Mukden incident. This next slide is going to offer some insight into how they viewed their role post-World War I. All right, so there are some questions for you. They're in your guided notes. Okay, pause it here. Okay, answer those questions. Pause it. Okay. So for number one, okay, what did the First World War reveal to the Fengshan officers about the international incident? It really underscored that the international order operated on the principle of survival of the fittest rather than on international cooperation or adherence to the existing global order. Number two, China's survival depended solely on its military strength, really implying that diplomatic efforts or international peace agreements were considered inadequate for ensuring the nation's security and sovereignty. And then number three, the perspective of these Fengshan officers challenges the idea of international peace efforts by suggesting that such efforts are naive or insufficient in a world governed by the principle of survival of the fittest, where military power is seen as the ultimate guarantee of a nation's survival. All right, there's your questions. Forgot to change the slide before. All right, the Indian National Conference. Okay, we've talked about this before. All right, this was established in 1885 as a result of the growing sense of national consciousness among Indians who were increasingly disillusioned by the discriminatory policies of the British Empire. Over time, Congress evolved from a forum for educated elites to a mass movement leading the charge for India's independence. Mahatma Gandhi, he was the leader of this, right? Under his leadership, it underwent a transformative period that significantly impacted India's struggle for independence from British rule. Gandhi became the de facto leader of the INC in 1920, introduced a new strategy of nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience. This was deeply rooted in the principles of satyagraha, which means truth and firmness. This period, especially during the interwar years, that's that time between World War I and World War II, was marked by several key moments that defined the INC's activities and its approach towards Indian self-rule. All right, so the non-cooperation movement. Okay, Gandhi's first major campaign was the non-cooperation movement, 1920 to 1922. Okay, these movements urged Indians to withdraw from British institutions boycott British goods, and ultimately render the British rule in India unworkable. This included boycotting government education, courts, and products, as well as returning honors conferred by the British Crown. This movement saw widespread participation across India, demonstrating the power of mass nonviolent action. The second civil disobedience movement was 1930 to 1934. And this was marked by the Salt March, a 240-mile trek led by Gandhi to produce salt from the seawater in the coastal village of Dandi. This was in defiance of the British Salt Act. And basically, this act prohibited Indians from collecting or selling salt, which was a staple in the Indian diet. That meant they would force them to buy it from British suppliers at a high tax. The Salt March catalyzed similar acts of civil disobedience across India, significantly undermining British authority and unifying diverse sections of Indian society against colonial rule. The INC also had a series of roundtable conferences from 1930 to 1932. Gandhi represents them at the Second Roundtable Conference in London, which was aimed at discussing constitutional reforms in India. Despite his efforts, the conference failed to address the principal demands of Indians for complete self-rule, leading to Gandhi's subsequent arrest upon his return to India and the intensification of the civil disobedience movement. We'll talk more about that in Unit 8. All right, so the National Congress of British West Africa, or the NCBWA, was founded in 1920. It represented an early form of Pan-Africanism, which united educated elites from the British colonies of the Gambia, Sierra Leone, the Gold Coast, which is now Ghana, and Nigeria. The Congress was spearheaded by individuals such as Joseph Casely Hayford, that's him on the right of the slide there, from the Gold Coast. He envisioned a collective effort to address the political, social, and economic grievances caused by colonial rule. It was one of the first major organizations whose goal was African independence from colonial powers. Its primary objectives included the promotion of unity and cooperation among British West African colonies, the establishment of a West African Court of Appeal, the formation of a legislative council in each colony with significant African representation, and then also the improvement of educational opportunities. The Congress convened for the first time in Gold Coast in 1920 and had several meetings thereafter. During these gatherings, delegates drafted memoranda and resolutions. They sent those to the British colonial authorities and the colonial office in London. They're advocating for things like constitutional reform, greater African participation in the governance of their own affairs. Despite facing resistance from colonial officials, they had limited immediate success. The NCBWA laid crucial groundwork for subsequent nationalist movements across West Africa. The efforts of this and its calls for reform can really be seen as precursors to the more intense struggles for independence that swept across Africa in the decades following World War II, which eventually led to the decolonization of the continent. Again, we'll pick that up in Unit 8 when we get to decolonization. All right, here are your major points that you guys need to be familiar with from 7.5, your key ideas for review. Take a picture of it if you need to. Email me if you have any questions, and I will see you guys next class. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.